Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 181, Makoto's Decision 01. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. After dealing with things with Makoto, she seemed to return to normal, focusing on elemental training. However, it could be said that the girl often looked at Minato, not with the gaze of a teammate anymore, and Hanabi noticed Makoto's look, with that sparkle, but said nothing. A week had passed while Minato continued training with heavy loads on his body. Hanabi and Makoto were developing their jutsus, and Due was studying the human body and chakra flow, occasionally receiving some help from Hanabi. No one had summoned them, leaving the team with uninterrupted time to train. Rumors circulated about Minato stopping an attack near the camp and Tsukumo defeating a Bijou with a single strike, but Minato paid little attention to them, focusing solely on his training with minimal interaction outside his own team. Training with every possible weight, Minato often surprised his teammates. He carried enormous stones on his back while hardening his body, adding his heaviest seals to further restrict his already powerful physique. Minato, by himself, was as strong as Rock Lee using the fourth gate, even without chakra. At the end of the day, everyone went to rest, and Minato prepared another meal for the group. As they ate, Makoto sat beside him in the corner. "Minato, can we talk later?" she asked. Minato nodded in response but kept eating. When they finished, he called her to his tent. "So, you're leaving tomorrow?" Minato asked, looking at her as they sat on the bed. "Yes. A supply team will take some things to camp for, where my father is. I'll speak with them tomorrow," she replied. "You know he won't accept your decision to leave the clan, don't you? And even then, the Uchihas wouldn't accept your lineage outside the clan," Minato said seriously. It wasn't that he didn't want Makoto to leave, he just wanted to go with her. "And with that, you want to fight the entire clan," she murmured, raising her eyebrows at him. "I will. I told you, and I still promise, that I'll make the Uchiha clan accept that we'll be together," Minato replied firmly, his tone serious. Makoto averted her gaze, slightly embarrassed. "Thank you," she murmured, moving closer and resting her head on his chest while gently touching his hand. "But even so, I have to go alone." "Don't worry. I'll use it," she said. Minato said nothing, simply staying still. They remained together for a few minutes until Makoto lifted her head and looked at him. "It's time for me to sleep. So, I'm going," she said. But before stepping away, she leaned in, and their lips met once more. Moments later, Makoto ran out of the tent, leaving Minato alone. He smiled as he watched her disappear into the night. The next morning, Minato announced that Makoto would be going to speak with her father. She gathered her things and went to where the supply team was preparing to leave. "Well, let's get back to training. Our teammate will return soon," Minato told the others as they headed to the training grounds. Meanwhile, Makoto made her way to Camp 4. It was a place adorned with Uchiha clan flags. After about 2 hours of travel, she arrived at her destination. The team of Chunin and Jonin that had accompanied her immediately moved to the area designated for supply tents. Makoto separated from them, walking through the camp as she made her way to the main tent. Her attire, emblazoned with the Uchiha clan symbol, ensured that no one disturbed her as she approached the entrance to the main tent. "You're the leader's daughter," one of the guards remarked immediately, recognizing her as she approached. "I'm here to speak with my father," she stated directly. The guards nodded and entered the tent to inform the leader of her presence. "You may enter," the guard returned and said. Makoto took a deep breath and stepped inside. Mazu Uchiha, Makoto's father, was busy talking with other clan members and analyzing reports, much like any other camp commander, whether the operation was fully run by the clan or not. He didn't even look at Makoto as she entered, continuing to read the reports. After jotting down some instructions, he stood up, handed the papers to the Uchiha men, and spoke a few words. "Take these. These are my orders. I expect you to succeed in the mission." His voice carried authority. The men left, walking past Makoto without noticing her. The girl's gaze landed on her father, analyzing him carefully. He finally turned his eyes toward her, his expression carrying a dissatisfied gleam. "You finally came. I expected to see you at least a week ago," he murmured in a stern tone. "I had to think about some things," she replied, raising her gaze to meet his directly, showing no fear. "Think about some things?" He raised an eyebrow, visibly intrigued, wondering what she meant. After all, he had called her to discuss her future. "Yes. About the plans you have for me," she answered firmly. He frowned before retorting, "There's nothing to think about, Makoto. You only need to obey. It's what's best for you and for the clan. You'll leave your team at the end of the war and dedicate yourself to your future fiancé, Fugaku, the best Uchiha of this generation," he stated, maintaining his authoritative tone, as if speaking to a subordinate, not his daughter. "Not when the decision is entirely yours, father," she shot back in a firm voice. "I came here to tell you that I will neither leave my team nor marry someone you've chosen for me," Makoto declared, keeping her tone steady. "What do you mean by that?" His expression darkened immediately, clearly angered by what he was hearing. "I've been proposed to, by the very person you suspect I have a closer relationship with than I should," she said with a defiant look and continued. "Minato asked me to marry him, and I said yes." Rebellious girl. The leader's voice was no longer calm, he was enraged upon hearing this. He shouted, and his anger began to release his chakra. Makoto instinctively raised her hands to protect herself as the room seemed to shake from the wind created by the high-level chakra of an elite jonin. Even the guards behind her hesitated, seeing the leader's fury, but none of them intervened. "Do you really think I'll allow this? That I'll let my daughter marry someone outside the clan? Let our lineage slip from our hands?" He continued exclaiming, his anger refusing to accept these words. "Minato said he would challenge you. He has proven himself stronger, even more than you." Makoto exclaimed, trying to release her own chakra in response, although it was far weaker than her father's. "The brat thinks he can challenge me," he scoffed, his eyes turning red with the activation of the Sharingan. "Just because he's earned some recognition and mastered a few powerful jutsus, he thinks he can compare to the strength of an entire clan?" His voice was cutting. Makoto quickly realized she was trapped in a genjutsu as she looked into her father's Sharingan. The space around her changed entirely, and she found herself on a battlefield littered with fallen ninja. There were no village headbands, only clan symbols. She could see the Uchiha clan fighting against the Senju clan and others. In front of her, her father remained, glaring at her with more anger than he had ever directed toward his daughter. "Do you really think I will destroy years of tradition just because you want to live out some teenage infatuation?" he said in a heavy tone. "No. But I will stay with Minato. I love him." Makoto shouted, her tone firm, as she struggled to break free from the genjutsu. "I've loved him for almost 7 years." "You love him? And does he love you back?" "According to the rumors, he already has 2 fiancées. You'll be the 3rd. He mocked her, trying to make her abandon the idea, pointing out that she wouldn't be the only one. "Even if I'm his 3rd wife, I still love him, and I won't back down." "I accepted his marriage proposal," she countered. "You don't have the power for this, Makoto. Forget it. You shouldn't even return anymore. I'll send you back to the clan in Konoha from here, and we'll isolate you until the end of this war. You won't have these ideas again. Otherwise, you'll never leave your room again," he said, his voice dripping with pure rage. "Minato said he would face your entire clan, and I believe he can defeat them," Makoto replied firmly, locking eyes with her father. Her 3-tomo Sharingan glowed intensely against his. "But if you think I also don't have the power to decide my own life, let me show you something, father." She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, her Sharingan had changed, taking her father by surprise. In the next moment, the chakra emanating from her, initially smaller than his, exploded, surpassing his in a radiant yellow hue. The entire space around them began to distort and fracture. She's breaking the genjutsu. Those eyes, could it be? Mazu lost his composure as he looked at his daughter, her eyes now in a form he had never seen before. He blinked and found himself back in his tent, but in the next instant, something struck him with such force that he was hurled against the table before being grabbed, unable to react. A massive golden chakra hand pinned him down, shattering his table. He was lifted into the air, staring at Makoto with a stunned expression. She continued to emanate the power of her Mangekyo Sharingan. How did you obtain those eyes?" he murmured, unable to hide his shock. "You know that when I awakened my Sharingan at the age of 7, it was Minato who helped me. He strangely knew the path to unlocking it," she began, leaving him even more astounded. "You know that most of my lightning jutsus, a nature I've been training for 3 years, were taught to me by Minato. These eyes, as you can see, are a step beyond your Sharingan. Minato encouraged me to develop them," she said, pausing while the man remained trapped in the golden skeletal hands. She continued, "He knows more about the Sharingan than anyone in this clan. So, you don't need to worry about him stealing your precious bloodline. He already knows all the secrets you so desperately hide but don't even fully understand. And if you won't accept him, I'll fight myself. I'll summon all my power," she exclaimed as another burst of golden chakra erupted from her, startling even the ninjas outside, who began wondering what was happening inside. "What's happening in there?" Some ninjas ran toward the entrance of the tent, seeing an intense yellow light emanating from the hole that had been torn into the side. Then, above the tent, an explosion ripped through the fabric, revealing something that sent fear through everyone in the camp. Makoto's father stared, astonished by what he saw. The skeletal structure of a giant began to form around Makoto, with a skull glaring directly at him. For the first time, he stood before a Susanoo, something he had only known as a legend from the clan scrolls. It was so massive that the tent couldn't contain it, forcing Mazu to face the skeletal figure glaring at him from outside the remains of the tent. Chapter 182 Makoto's Decision 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. In the Uchiha clan's training field, the yellow aura continued burning, appearing out of nowhere, while the most sensitive ninjas present could feel a cold, dark chakra exploding so intensely that it sent chills down their spines. The Uchiha clan's patriarch found himself in a highly precarious situation at that moment. His cautious eyes were fixed on the skeletal hand formed by his own daughter, Makoto, and his gaze fell upon her enormous eyes, resembling those of a great demon staring him down as if he were nothing. Makoto had awakened the legendary Mangekyo Sharingan, a mythical ability in her clan that only a handful of people throughout history had ever achieved. Feeling powerless before those eyes, he realized Makoto was far more powerful than he had ever imagined. "Makoto," he murmured, incredulous. "I told you, father, I would gain the power to decide my own destiny, and I won't play your political games," Makoto spoke firmly, her eyes locked on his. "You don't understand, Makoto. You have a responsibility to the clan, especially now that you possess those eyes," he replied, attempting to argue while maintaining his authoritative posture. "Even so, I will choose my own destiny, and I refuse to follow your orders, father. I am taking a different path, and I will do it even if I have to force my way," Makoto declared, her voice filled with determination. She felt so powerful, yearning to push her limits and see how far her eyes' power could go, almost intoxicated by the strength of her new eyes. Then, a familiar voice echoed in her mind. "Remember, never use your eyes for too long, or you'll go blind." Minato's words resonated in her thoughts, and she knew she needed to stop. Makoto remained satisfied with what she had demonstrated to her father. The giant skeleton she had summoned began to dissipate, causing the patriarch to fall to the ground. He managed to land with balance but maintained a cautious gaze at Makoto as the yellow aura receded, now only enveloping her body briefly before fading away entirely. Her eyes returned to their normal three-tomo state, yet she continued to stare at him with the same unwavering resolve as before. "This is my answer, father. Now decide, because I am leaving here, whether with your approval or not," Makoto said with authority. At that moment, several people began entering the tent, cautiously observing both of them and taking in the chaotic scene. The ground was gouged, and the tent was torn open above Makoto, though no trace of the skeleton remained. The clan leader maintained a wary gaze on his daughter, while the newcomers appeared confused by what had transpired. Patriarch, they murmured hesitantly. The patriarch clenched his teeth, alternating his gaze between Makoto and the others. Even Fugaku was among them, visibly curious about what had happened. "What was that giant skeleton?" someone asked. "Forget it. All of you, leave now," the patriarch ordered, his voice firm and commanding. The men exchanged glances before obeying the order and leaving. Once everyone had exited, he turned his serious gaze back to Makoto, who remained resolute, defying him with her stance. "How did you get those eyes?" he asked, his voice deep. "It doesn't matter," Makoto replied, recalling the unpleasant experience Minato had made her endure. The memory filled her chest with despair and anger, to the point where she couldn't speak to Minato for days afterward, upset with him. "Makoto, you know what those eyes mean to the clan," he insisted. "I don't know what they mean to the clan, but I know what they mean to me, father." "And you don't want to face my eyes," Makoto stated, her voice laden with confidence. Despite not yet having full control over her Sharingan, Makoto knew she could surpass her father in a direct confrontation in this state. Furthermore, she was certain Minato would support her, even against the entire clan if a conflict arose. "Why? Why are you doing this, Makoto? You were supposed to be the wife of the next patriarch, to ensure our bloodline continued to lead the clan." Mazu Uchiha exclaimed, his anger evident in every word, spoken through gritted teeth. "I love someone else, father. And, even if I won't be his only wife, I've already decided, I'm going to marry him," Makoto declared without remorse. "I should never have let you join that boys' team," he murmured with a tone of regret. "This happened before the team. Since then, he helped me unlock my Sharingan, and I began to love him. That was over 7 years ago," she replied, as her father raised an eyebrow, surprised. "There's that. You mentioned he helped you unlock your Sharingan. How does he have such knowledge? Even about the Mangekyo?" he asked cautiously, reflecting on what she had said earlier. "He didn't steal from the clan, father. After all, he knows more than the clan could ever teach me," she retorted, leaving her father even more frustrated. He looked at Makoto for a while. He knew what she wanted was absurd, something the clan would never accept. "I won't give you an answer on this now. Although I'm clearly dissatisfied with all of this and disagree with it, especially since you become even more valuable, I will think about it. I need time to reflect," he finally said, acknowledging that he had no more arguments and couldn't make such a decision lightly. He knew he would have to consult certain people, the elders. "You mentioned that this boy challenges the entire clan," he continued cautiously. "Tell me, who is stronger, your eyes or him?" "Minato is stronger than I am. Even using all my powers, I still can't compare to his strength," she replied calmly. "Why? What makes this boy so special? Would he face the clan if necessary?" her father asked suspiciously. "I won't speak of Minato's strength, father, but rest assured, when he says he'll face the entire clan, he can do it," Makoto affirmed firmly. The patriarch observed her for a few seconds, pondering her words, before letting out a scoff. "I don't believe he can do it, no matter what. Not even with this rumored ability to stop a Bijudama. Even so, many in the clan will be dissatisfied and will surely attack him. The question is, will he handle it?" he inquired. "Minato has already anticipated something like that. Even so, he'll face anyone," Makoto replied with a firm tone once more. "I just hope you're making the right choice, Makoto. Because from now on, things won't be easy," he said seriously. It was clear that the clan would not be pleased with his decision to allow his daughter to marry someone outside the clan. In the end, he simply sighed, closed his eyes, and deactivated the Sharingan he had kept active until then. "Fine. You may go," he said, still angry but aware that he could do nothing more. Makoto turned and was about to leave when he called her again. "Makoto," he said, making her stop and look sideways. "Your eyes. Don't forget them." Never reveal those eyes to anyone in the clan, much less to the village. They'll see them as a curse, he warned, his tone dark.
I know, father. Minato has already told me about this.
We've been careful not to show these eyes to anyone, she replied. He told me he knows the four elders are constantly trying to find a way to destroy us, the Uchihas, because they see us as a plague. They want to get rid of us for good, she added, making her father raise an eyebrow, evaluating his daughter.
I understand. He's not wrong. Very well, then.
Until next time, he said simply, as he watched Makoto step through the tent's entrance and disappear.
Daughter,
was the last thing he managed to murmur before returning to his tasks, cleaning up the mess created by his daughter's Susanoo. He thought deeply about what would be best for Makoto. A difficult decision, and clearly, neither choice would be without consequences. In the end, Makoto managed to join another team returning to Camp 6 and advanced into the early evening toward the camp. She stayed there for a while, trying to keep to herself, as everyone looked at her cautiously, curious about what had happened in the leader's tent.
None of them knew she had created the Susanoo.
Even Fugaku tried to speak with her as soon as he saw her and approached, but she simply rejected him, not wanting to talk. She could only hope that everything would work out now, though she feared that Minato might face the entire clan alone. Even though she admired the strength of the man she loved, a seed of concern took root in her. In silence, she traveled with the other team through the forest, heading to Camp 6 once more. Having chosen not to stay in the clan's camp, she felt it inappropriate to sleep in a tent there after the chaos she had created with her father. This surprised her companions when, as they were dining, she reappeared with a small smile on her face.
Makoto, you're back.
Minato was serving food to the camp members, who eagerly awaited his cooking.
There were even some guest jonin, as his culinary skills were legendary. Makoto approached quietly.
Yes, I'm back, she replied with a small smile.
Well, that's great.
Anyway, join us and have something to eat, he invited, and she nodded. After the jonin departed, the group began chatting among themselves.
The atmosphere was much lighter now. For the first time, Makoto seemed genuinely happy, even smiling, which surprised her friend Hanabi.
Watching from a distance, Hanabi admired Makoto's openness, as she had never seen her so content before.
At the end of the night, everyone went to sleep. Makoto, however, accompanied Minato to his tent.
Sitting down, they began to talk about what had happened.
You unleashed your Susanoo in the middle of the camp? Against your father? Minato asked, surprised to hear about the confrontation. Yes. He had put me in a genjutsu to try and lecture me.
My 3-tomo Sharingan wasn't enough to break it, so I used the Mangekyo, unleashed the Susanoo, and restrained him, she explained calmly.
Well,
that's a bit unexpected, he murmured, scratching his head. Anyway, I'm glad you've resolved things. Yes, she murmured back, gently taking his hands and looking into his eyes.
Minato looked back at her, and it didn't take long for their lips to meet. But Makoto didn't stop at a simple kiss.
She parted her lips, surprising Minato as she deepened the kiss, her hands sliding across his body.
Hey, Makoto.
What are we doing? He pulled back slightly, looking at her. Her cheeks were flushed, and she gazed at him with a seductive expression.
We'll face this as husband and wife.
We can take the next step, she said, but he frowned.
Not yet, Makoto, he tried to calm her. We're still young.
This will only be appropriate after marriage. Let's wait a little longer, he said seriously, unwilling to take that step at this point in their lives.
All right.
She murmured, her embarrassment growing.
Anyway, it's time for me to go. She said timidly, starting to leave. Makoto. Minato called her, and she looked back. Prepare for tomorrow. We'll begin real training, and by the end of it, I want everyone to grow stronger than ever before. Makoto gave a small smile at his words. I'm looking forward to it. After all, I don't want to let you face the entire clan alone because of me. If we're going to be together, we'll do it together, as husband and wife, she said with a smile before leaving the tent. Chapter 183, Gate of Pain. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39.
Things seemed to return to normal after Makoto returned from her meeting with her father, despite her appearing much closer to Minato and occasionally giving him affectionate gestures. Team 7 focused entirely on their training during this period. Month after month passed, with them only stepping away from training to undertake quick and simple missions for the camp leader, none as significant as the one they had completed in the land of Oto. Additionally, the military base established during that mission managed to stabilize very well.
According to rumors Minato overheard in the camp, Konoha had successfully blocked any enemy attempts to reclaim the territory.
Since they hadn't sent any major forces again, it was speculated that they were waiting for the Jinchuriki to recover from the damage it had suffered. The war in the north concentrated more to the east, in the land of hot springs, with Mist Village soldiers advancing southward, attempting to breach the border. However, there weren't many truly grueling conflicts during this time, as it was more of a trench war than actual large-scale combat. This resulted in occasional skirmishes but nothing frequent or significant. Minato was trying to make progress in understanding Haki, but it was extremely challenging, and his progress was slower than he had hoped. He was already much better than when he had started, but even so, he still hadn't reached a basic level where he could maintain Haki consistently. He kept aiming higher while continuing to invest time in his team's training. The girls, on the other hand, were making significant progress in their elemental jutsus, focusing entirely on intense training. Hanabi had mastered new wind release jutsus, and her arrows were becoming increasingly powerful thanks to her improved control and compression of the technique. She began gaining recognition during missions, as she could intercept enemies from great distances. Rumors about her abilities even spread among enemies, perhaps rivaling the tale of Minato stopping a tailed beast bomb.
However, her growing fame was not well received by other Hyuga ninjas in Konoha's camp.
"It's pathetic to fight with a bow and arrow," some said, comments that reached Minato's ears. Hanabi also seemed disheartened by this, as she felt she was growing stronger, yet some people seemed intent on belittling her.
Minato knew it was primarily due to the Hyuga clan's strict tradition of hand-to-hand combat. They disliked the idea of someone using ranged combat instead of the clan's techniques. Nonetheless, Minato always reassured her. "What they say is nonsense. I'll support you, even if your clan doesn't approve of your way of fighting," he would tell her, offering words of encouragement. Makoto, for her part, also showed remarkable growth. She had mastered many lightning release jutsus that Minato had taught her and was improving in her fire release techniques, a hallmark of her clan. Minato personally trained her in taijutsu, working to strengthen her body by having her wear weights to become more effective in close combat. He also helped her privately control her Mangekyo Sharingan, far from prying eyes. She was beginning to master the explosive chakra growth she had gained after acquiring her new eyes. Minato always shared what he knew about the Sharingan and had no hesitation in teaching someone he trusted with his life and also loved. As for Due, he had shown the most significant growth among them, as he had started as merely a genin in terms of strength. Minato had been relentless in training him, knowing the potential he held. He pushed Due to his physical limits day after day. Despite being worn out from training, Due would read the books Minato gave him, along with the diagram he had drawn detailing the human body's 8 gates. Due proved to be a prodigy, quickly surpassing expectations. He developed an understanding of the human body even greater than Minato's. Using the materials provided to him, Due finally began mastering the first gates 2 months after Minato started his training. Now, 6 months had passed since Minato arrived at the camp with his team and recruited Due, marking the halfway point of their training period. Now, Minato couldn't help but feel excited about what he was seeing in front of him. At the training grounds, he observed a man enveloped in visible chakra, with a fierce expression. His skin seemed to turn reddish, and his veins bulged visibly all over his body, as if they were about to burst. The chakra around him spiraled like a vortex, lifting the ground beneath him and cracking it under the sheer pressure of this man. This was the mastery of the 4th gate. Due was a genius, and in just 4 months since starting his true training with the 8 gates, he had mastered the gate of opening, the gate of healing, the gate of life, and now the gate of pain, all thanks to his body already being strengthened by years of intense training.
His chakra erupted like never before, creating a disturbance in the air that even Makoto and Hanabi could feel. They stopped their practice at different corners of the training ground, astonished, as they activated their dojutsu to observe what was happening. They were stunned by how Dewey's chakra was exploding through the pathways inside his body as he stood before Minato, ready to attack. Very well, Dewey. You finally reached a higher level. You're at the peak of a Chunin's level, perhaps even close to a Jonin if you master this power for use in battle, Minato said calmly, with a sincere smile after asking Dewey to show him everything he could do. Congratulations. Dewey did not respond. He kept a serious expression, clearly struggling to control this newly mastered power, which was normal. The scene reminded Minato of Lee's fight against Gaara in the original story, with the same overwhelming pressure that Lee had created after opening this very gate. Minato pushed that thought aside. Dewey was waiting for his reaction. It was clear that he wanted Minato to be ready to face him. Dewey would never attack without ensuring his opponent was prepared, a gentle trait of his. Minato then moved his hands, assuming a fighting stance. Dewey seemed satisfied with this and wasted no time. The next moment, he disappeared, and the ground beneath him exploded, surprising the spectators. What speed! Makoto and Hanabi couldn't contain their shock. Even with their keen eyes, they could barely keep up with Dewey's current speed, surpassing all their expectations. In the next instant, they saw Dewey punching toward Minato, attempting to land a blow. However, to their shock, Minato simply tilted his head to the side, dodging with a smile. He dodged so easily at that speed? Makoto murmured, incredulous. Dewey didn't stop, even surprised by this. He unleashed a flurry of punches, trying to hit Minato, but Minato continued dodging all the attacks by moving his body quickly, as if he already predicted the trajectory of each strike. It was a perfect opportunity for Minato to test the level of his observation haki against Dewey's speed and strength. Sometimes I think Minato is an even bigger monster than I imagined. Hanabi murmured, watching Dewey throw punches and kicks in every direction while Minato dodged each one effortlessly. Every missed strike from Dewey caused the ground to explode, sending debris and dust into the air. Boom! 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 The explosions continued as Minato stepped back for a moment and, in the next, ducked his head to dodge a kick from Dewey, who missed again. Dewey quickly turned, attempting to hit Minato with another direct blow to the ground, but ended up shattering the terrain and raising a cloud of dust without touching his target. Minato reappeared on the other side, unscathed. Very good, Dewey. But it's still not enough to hit me. Keep going. Try to use all your speed. Minato exclaimed, excited, not bothering to use anything more than his reflexes to dodge. Dewey had already removed all his training weights. He was fighting without any restraints. Despite maintaining a serious expression, he seemed motivated by Minato's words. Clenching his fists, he tried to push the fourth gate's potential even further, unleashing more chakra and increasing the windstorm around him. Once again, Dewey vanished, reappearing in front of Minato. Even so, Minato dodged his opponent's punch by moving his hand and redirecting the attack to the side. At the same instant, the spot where Dewey had been began to explode. He had reached such a level of speed that he was faster than the destruction caused by his own strength. As Minato continued dodging, the ground beneath him, where Dewey's punch had landed earlier, began to explode with a slight delay. It almost seemed as though Dewey was releasing his own chakra through the punch to cause destruction, something reminiscent of what Dewey's son would do in the future with the seventh gate. This is getting interesting. Minato laughed, showing no sign of the fear or concern that anyone else would likely feel in this situation. Dewey quickly resumed attacking, chasing Minato with relentless punches, channeling more chakra into his strikes as the ground exploded beneath his feet. Minato jumped back with a powerful leap, but Dewey gave him no respite, continuing to pursue him. Finally, Minato grew tired of simply dodging, stomping hard on the ground and shattering it as he launched forward at full speed using Saru. It was time to test his dry, unenhanced physical strength against the raw power of a fourth gate user. The two clashed in the center of the field, their fists colliding in an explosive impact.
Makoto and Hanabi watched, stunned, as a powerful gust of wind burst from their fists. Minato felt his arm beginning to ache and even glow faintly from the force of colliding with Due.
He hadn't coated his punches with chakra or any enhancements, and yet, despite the damage he was clearly taking, he didn't falter. He held his ground, relying on his endurance, while the two fighters finally separated after reaching their limits from the exchange.
Due also remained standing, firm and determined.
Without hesitation, he advanced again, disappearing and exploding the ground once more as he moved.
Minato was quick to counter, meeting him head-on with techniques from the 6 styles of the Navy.
The girls could barely see the two fighters moving at incredible speed, trading blows across the battlefield. Each impact sent shockwaves across the field, causing the ground to erupt and making it nearly impossible for the spectators to keep up.
"This is getting quite fun, don't you think, Due?"
Minato remarked as he stomped the ground in one corner of the field, propelling himself forward again. He was on the verge of letting the pure adrenaline of the fight take over his body, but at the peak of the battle, his expression shifted to one of disappointment. He had to stop abruptly at that moment when he saw Due reappear on the ground. Due's speed was visibly decreasing, and his eyes began to lose their gleam. He simply collapsed to the ground, exhausted, his chakra fully depleted. His skin returned to normal, and the bulging veins receded.
Minato had already stopped in front of him, scratching his head.
"I guess he's reached his limit," he murmured.
The fight hadn't lasted more than 5 minutes, but Due couldn't maintain the pace any longer.
"Hanabi, check if he's okay," Minato requested. The girl crossed the battlefield, now wrecked by their taijutsu clash, and began examining Due's body with her Byakugan. She then applied a medical jutsu to repair some of the damage the fourth gate had caused.
"So, this is the true technique he's been developing? Are you learning it too?" Makoto asked as she approached, curiosity evident in her tone. It was the first time Due had demonstrated the technique to them. Minato shook his head. "No, I'm not learning this technique. But yes, these are the 8 gates. And I'm confident that by the end of this war, this guy will master the 6th gate." Even though the fight had ended, he seemed pleased with Due's progress. After all, the higher the gate, the harder it was to master. Yet Due had managed to master 4 gates in just 4 months. Minato was certain that, just like Guy in the future, Due would prove to be equally talented. But unlike Guy, Due wouldn't need to die to make a name for himself. Minato was determined to ensure that Due would survive this world and achieve recognition long before any Third Great War occurred. Chapter 184, Fugaku's Challenge. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 39. "Is there something here, Minato?" Hanabi approached Minato while he stared intently at the scene before him, finding nothing out of the ordinary. "No, I still can't see anything that could explain what happened here," Minato replied, touching the ground, trying to find any trace of a struggle or even footprints, but there was nothing. They were in the middle of a forest between the camps and the outposts at the border, where there had been reports of Konoha ninjas disappearing. Their team had been assigned to investigate since no other team sent here had managed to find any clues so far. The mission was simple: search for signs of the missing teams and try to uncover anything that the others might have overlooked. "How strange, there's nothing here," Minato murmured, a bit concerned about the untouched scenery while the reports suggested people were vanishing month after month. "Well, let's continue along the route. I want to check other areas here to see if we find anything," he suggested finally. They had already scoured the entire area. As soon as Minato called for them to move forward, Makoto and Due, who had been spread out in different corners, approached. Then they continued along the route. It had been 7 months since Team 7 had entered the northern border, and the investigations into the first disappearances had begun 4 months ago. Several teams had been sent, but all returned empty-handed. The area in question was near Camp 6, but it also connected Camps 5 and 4, on the left side near the Land of Hot Springs. Ninjas from all these camps were disappearing. This had become such a severe problem that routes were altered to avoid the location. However, the disappearances continued in other nearby points, with this place being central, leading everyone to believe Kumo was involved. But it seemed strange to Minato since there were almost no signs or evidence left behind. It was as if people simply vanished like ghosts. It felt as if a Kamui user was taking them, but Minato knew that shouldn't be possible, though he had another suspicion in mind. "What do you think this is?" Makoto asked Minato as they stood in another area with the same result. "I don't know." Minato replied in a somber tone while opening the report once again before him. It listed all the disappearances that had occurred. He examined the list of names. There were people from various origins, but one specific detail caught his attention: many members of the Uchiha clan were among the missing. It was the clan with the highest number of missing members by far, at least 32 of them. Although they only accounted for 1/5 of the total, it was highly suspicious. Minato's eyes naturally fell to the ground. He tried to process what could cause something like this. No matter how skilled a ninja was at infiltration, it was nearly impossible to enter without leaving any trace. Using his haki, Minato didn't sense anything. Even though Camp 4 was nearby, explaining the high number of Uchiha among the missing, Minato began to consider that the other disappearances from different camps might be distractions or a smokescreen for targeted captures. So, is Madara involved? Minato thought, pondering his hypotheses. If Setsu was indeed capturing Uchiha and other ninjas, this was a bigger problem than he had imagined. Even with his mastery of observation haki, Minato wouldn't be able to handle something so stealthy. Zetsu could easily camouflage himself with nature. Only Naruto, with his ability to sense emotions, could identify him clearly. Minato's haki could potentially do it if it were stronger, but he wasn't at that level yet. That was why he hadn't wanted to get involved with Nagato. He knew he couldn't protect him from Zetsus. "What should we do, then, Minato?" Makoto asked again, watching him as he studied the scroll. He sighed and put it away. "Let's return to the camp and submit our report," he replied finally, as there was nothing more they could do at that moment. However, just as they were about to return and leap through the trees, all 4 of them stopped. A team appeared, moving quickly among the trees, heading directly toward them, and landing in front of them. Minato couldn't help but frown as he saw who was there. The person leading the group didn't even try to hide his intentions. His eyes glowed with the activated Sharingan, staring directly at Minato. "You," Makoto murmured, stepping closer to Minato, fully aware of what this could mean. "Namikaze Minato." A voice filled with anger echoed from the other side. The person spoke with intensity, his red eyes radiating a clear intent to confront Minato. "Uchiha Fugaku," Minato said, recognizing the future patriarch of the Uchiha clan standing before him. He didn't seem pleased to hear his name spoken. Minato could imagine why. The other Uchiha with him also had their Sharingans activated, each one of them looking equally furious. "Why are they acting like this?" Due asked, suspicion evident in his voice, while Makoto and Hanabi, noticing the tense situation, began moving into combat stances. "Minato Namikaze, you." Fugaku Uchiha repeated, continuing, "You dare to disrespect our clan? We've heard that you intend to take the clan leader's daughter and challenge us." He spoke as Minato narrowed his eyes. "It's not a lie. Makoto will be my wife, and I challenge the Uchiha clan to try and take her from me," he stated openly, his tone firm. Hanabi and Due were surprised by this declaration. Meanwhile, Fugaku looked as though he wanted to kill Minato with his eyes alone. It was a significant humiliation for him. A week ago, Fugaku had discovered that Makoto might no longer marry him. This news left him stunned. He needed that position to solidify his status as the future clan leader. With the current patriarch growing old and soon to become an elder, Fugaku, being the strongest and the favorite, seemed poised to take over. However, Mazu Uchiha had revealed that the engagement contract with Makoto might not be upheld since she declared she would marry someone else. She had even said she would fight anyone to prove her choice. Upon learning that a team from Camp 6, including Makoto's Team 7, had come to investigate, Fugaku gathered a group to confront them, finding them in the middle of the forest. It didn't seem like the most civilized approach, but this was the Uchiha clan and the ninja world.
Fugaku intended to take what he wanted by force if necessary, even if it meant fighting a substantial number of opponents.
What did you say? You dare humiliate me like this?
Fugaku shouted at him.
That's not true.
We never had any engagement to begin with for you to claim he's stealing me from you.
Makoto exclaimed, stepping beside Minato and activating her Sharingan. Makoto, do you even understand what you're doing? Fugaku yelled at her, his anger now directed at Makoto as well. Do you really intend to abandon the Uchiha name and marry someone outside the clan? This is unacceptable. Your father cannot be serious.
I will choose who I want to be with, Makoto said, closing her eyes and activating a stronger Sharingan almost unconsciously. But a hand stopped her. Stop it, Minato said firmly, looking at her. She glanced at him with her 3-tomo Sharingan and nodded, realizing she was being impulsive.
Minato let Makoto step back and turn to face Fugaku.
Then prove you're stronger than me, Fugaku Uchiha. All of you can come at me at once, Minato said, stepping forward.
The Uchiha didn't seem intimidated, watching as Minato distanced himself slightly from his group. Defeating you here in the middle of nowhere is a waste of time, Fugaku said.
I challenge you to a fight after this war, Minato Namikaze.
I challenge you to face me in front of the entire Uchiha clan. Do you think you're special just because you have S-rank jutsu and are called a war hero?
He sneered with a tone of anger.
That's not a bad idea.
Very well, I accept your challenge, Fugaku. I'll be waiting for this fight, Minato said calmly. Though he was ready to act if Fugaku made an aggressive move, he couldn't deny that Fugaku's proposal was better. It would give Minato a chance to end any opposition from the clan regarding Makoto being with him. As soon as the war ends, you'll receive the challenge, Fugaku said, the only words he offered before turning and leaping into the trees, heading back to Camp 4. This wasn't even about Makoto anymore, from Fugaku's point of view. He felt humiliated and wanted to humiliate Minato in return. He sought to prove his worth as a leader and put an end to anyone insulting the most powerful clan in Konoha.
What was that? Due murmured, unable to do anything but listen to everything that had transpired. Family troubles, Minato commented.
Though it seemed like a joke, his tone remained neutral. Thank you, Makoto murmured, and Minato turned to her with a smile.
It's fine.
You know this was inevitable, so I'll face him in front of all the Uchiha, Minato said.
Now, let's get going, Minato added, signaling everyone to follow. They nodded and leaped into the trees, returning to Camp 6. Due still had a doubtful expression, while Hanabi cast a knowing glance at Makoto and Minato.
As they left the area, silence returned. Even the animals seemed to avoid the place, leaving it eerily quiet. In one of the trees, a white figure emerged, observing where the two groups had departed. Looks like they got away, White Zetsu said in a disappointed tone. Other Zetsus began to appear near him, half of their bodies merging with the ground.
Yeah. We gathered so many of us, and in the end, they just left. Black Zetsu isn't going to be very happy we failed the mission, they began to murmur. Anyway, let's head back. We need to report what happened.
It's been so dull around here lately since the Konoha ninjas have become so cautious, the one in the tree said, retreating into it.
The others sank back into the earth, leaving the area completely empty once again.
Elsewhere, deep underground, while the Zetsus traveled through the soil, a two-tone Zetsu was working with a jar filled with liquid. Inside the jar were 2 pairs of Sharingan eyes. Carefully, he placed them on a shelf lined with other eyes.
Zetsu.
An old voice called out, and the Zetsus turned to the man seated near them. He was connected to a strange flower by a cable, none other than Uchiha Madara himself.
Yes, Madara, White Zetsu answered in his usual cheerful tone. How is our target? Madara asked, his gaze fixed on the two-tone Zetsu. He's very excited. White Zetsu responded playfully.
The Uchiha boy is showing interest. I am speaking to him, Black Zetsu's ominous voice replied, sending a chill through the atmosphere.
I see.
I want you to bring him to me as soon as he accepts our proposal, Madara said, his commanding tone leaving no room for argument. The Zetsus nodded, departing the area while Madara remained, waiting patiently for an heir who could be corrupted and used to advance his plan until he could be revived by the Rinnegan.
Chapter 185, Year 40. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 40. Boom. Boom. Boom.
The explosions echoed across the training field as both opponents charged at each other relentlessly, exchanging blows at incredible speed. Due, surrounded by a roaring green aura, tried to counter Minato's punch, which was coated in a layer of dark haki, generating another explosion in the center of the battlefield.
Boom. But they didn't stop there. Minato and Due quickly advanced again.
Minato's fist had returned to its normal state, but he clenched it tightly once more, creating and enveloping it in another layer of armament haki as he prepared for a new attack. He couldn't maintain the haki for long, but he was getting good results thanks to the intense training of recent months. Meanwhile, Due showed remarkable progress in mastering his transformation with the fourth gate, fighting fiercely against Minato in a much more intense battle than their first.
Minato was happy for the man.
Due had finally fully mastered the gate, demonstrating with all his strength what he was capable of. It had been 9 months since Minato had arrived at that camp. They wouldn't stay there much longer, as a year would be completed in 3 months. Even so, the time hadn't been wasted at all. Minato had finally begun to release his basic haki but still needed to learn how to control it fully, something he knew wouldn't be easy before the end of the war. The year was 40 since the founding of Konoha. Minato was now 14, having celebrated his birthday almost 2 months ago, and many things had happened during those months. However, he set those thoughts aside to focus on his fight against Due. Once again, he tried to maintain his haki without distractions, delivering a new blow against Due. When Minato struck, Due felt the immense pressure of the attack. His body was thrown backward, but Minato couldn't maintain his energy for long either. As a result, Due managed to regain his balance and returned to combat, countering Minato's attacks. Now that Due had completed his transformation with the fourth gate, he was at the level of a beginner jounin, something that made him happy. Being a lifelong genin, it was a remarkable change. The fight went on for quite some time, both maintaining their advanced states. Finally, the two realized it was enough. Due began to tire, and Minato felt his stamina waning, as he couldn't properly control his haki and was spending a lot of energy to maintain it. They had been fighting for over an hour, trying to keep their abilities at their peak, something they were both still learning to do.
Well, I think that's enough, Due. How are you? Minato asked, sighing as Due began to revert to normal.
His skin lightened, and the chakra around his body dissipated slowly.
He looked at Minato, visibly exhausted. I'm fine, but I can have total control now. I'll be able to move on to the next gate. Due replied excitedly. That's great.
Let's call it a day for training, Minato said with a satisfied smile.
Due nodded, still excited.
That afternoon, only the two of them were training. The girls had left earlier after a sparring session among themselves. It was a calm afternoon at the camp when Minato returned and found the girls studying and meditating in their tents. Suddenly, Hanabi came out of her tent and approached him.
Minato, a jounin delivered this.
There's a scroll for you from the western border, Hanabi announced, extending the scroll.
Any news from Sensei? Minato asked, raising an eyebrow. No.
He's still in the land of rain, she replied, shaking her head.
Minato nodded.
It had been 2 months since they learned that Jiraiya had requested leave to remain in the land of rain, and the Hokage had accepted his request in the midst of a war.
Minato knew the reason well.
Jiraiya had found Nagato and seemed determined to stay there for the next 3 years, even with the war raging on the other borders.
Minato wasn't surprised, it seemed to be Jiraiya's destiny to train Nagato.
Despite Jiraiya's absence, Minato maintained frequent contact with Tsuna, exchanging letters from that border. Additionally, he also communicated directly with Kushina, who remained in the village, since he was able to send correspondence to his fiancées. Thank you, Hanabi, Minato said, taking the scroll as he walked toward his tent. Before entering, he cast a glance at Due.
Due, be prepared. We'll head to the command tent shortly.
Understood, he requested firmly.
Due nodded, visibly nervous. Minato entered his tent, taking a deep breath as he opened the scroll.
The news was encouraging. The war in the West was shifting significantly in Konoha's favor. Even with the new poisons developed by the Land of Wind, the deployment of medical ninjas in every combat team had drastically reduced battlefield casualties. This, combined with efficient strategies, allowed Konoha to gain the upper hand in fighting two nations simultaneously. Konoha's superiority had become so evident that, months earlier, Hanzo of the Land of Rain had spared the lives of Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru during a mission in which they clashed. Recognizing their strength, he had named them the legendary Sannin. The title quickly spread across the borders and throughout the Land of Fire, elevating the respect for these three students of the third Hokage. Even enemy forces began referring to them with reverence, acknowledging their reputation. At that time, even the common people added the honorific Sama when mentioning them, not just Tsunade because she was the first Hokage's granddaughter. Now, it seemed the war wouldn't last much longer. With the current strategic advantage, all indications pointed to the Land of Fire emerging victorious. However, Minato was not entirely at ease. Despite the relative calm in the north, he had a feeling that this would soon change. His years of experience in war had taught him never to let his guard down and to sense when something was about to happen. As he pondered this, Minato continued reading Tsuna's letter in his hands. Besides excelling as a medical ninja, she had already begun more advanced training under her mother's guidance. Tsuna was making significant progress, showing potential that placed her far ahead of other medics, much like Sakura was at 16. Tsuna had great aptitude and was already considered the best healer of her generation, second only to her mother in wartime skills. However, a lingering concern weighed on Minato's mind: the fate of Dan, Tsuna's father, and Nawaki, her uncle. In the original timeline he knew, Dan and Nawaki were supposed to die soon. Minato was determined to try and prevent this fate but understood that he couldn't control everything in the war. He couldn't be everywhere at once, but if he had the chance to save them, he would. Minato took a deep breath, closed the scroll, and decided to reply to Tsuna the next day. He stored the scroll and began organizing his things. Besides his hockey training, he continued practicing his Fuinjutsu, aiming to reach Mito's level. He had even managed to develop a chakra observation seal far more efficient than the Uzumaki clan's older version, which had several flaws and had been used when chakra was drawn from Shikaku. Minato wasn't yet able to fight completely without limits on the battlefield, absorbing energy from enemies, but his seal was already a significant help in extending his stamina during battles. After tidying up, Minato stepped out of his tent, finding a visibly nervous Due waiting outside. "Let's go," Minato said. Due nodded, still somewhat uneasy, and Minato sighed at seeing him like that, attempting to encourage him with a smile. "I know how you feel." "I was nervous too when this happened to me," Minato said with a reassuring smile as they walked through the camp together. "Hey, Minato, how's it going?" Someone greeted Minato enthusiastically on the way. Minato returned the greeting. He was widely known in the camp, regarded as the strongest ninja at the base. His reputation wasn't only as a war hero but also from his success in missions where he often rescued allies or confronted invaders in extremely challenging operations. Minato was incredibly fast at locating and tracking enemies. Although the investigation mission into the disappearance of ninjas hadn't yielded conclusive results, the vanishings had significantly decreased, and the camp felt more at peace. Minato simply waved at everyone who called out to him as he continued walking with Due toward the command tent. Upon arrival, they were granted entry by Commander Aburame. "So, you've arrived," the commander remarked in a nonchalant tone, contrasting the typically reserved demeanor of the Aburame clan, despite inwardly disliking being around people, the fact he didn't outwardly show. "Yes, Commander. I'm here to nominate my team member as qualified for promotion to Chunin rank," Minato declared with a smile. Due was visibly nervous. This was his first promotion, and he had never imagined achieving something so significant in less than a year. After 9 months of intense training and dedication to mastering the gates, he was finally beginning to shine like a diamond being polished, hidden within the leaves.
Minato knew this was the right time for Due.
With his mastery of the fourth gate and consistent performance on missions, he had proven himself deserving. The previous week, during a critical mission, Due had managed to defeat 3 Jounin from the Cloud Village using the fully activated fourth gate, showcasing his strength and skill. Well, with your recommendation, the reports I've received, and the witnesses to his performance, it seems everything is in order for the promotion, the commander commented.
Due looked as if he might burst into tears of joy. Minato smiled and turned to the commander.
So, I believe everything is ready, correct? He asked. Yes, everything is prepared as you requested, the commander replied, pulling a document from his drawer and placing it on the desk.
Minato felt a deep sense of satisfaction seeing his friend finally being recognized.
He had closely supervised Dewey's progress. You just need to sign here, the commander indicated the scroll containing Dewey's details and mission records. Overcome with emotion, Dewey approached and signed the document, officially receiving the title of Chunin. The certificate was also signed by both Minato, as the team leader, and the camp commander, formally recognizing the promotion.
Thank you. Thank you. Due exclaimed with tears in his eyes, holding the document as if it were something incredibly precious. I'm happy for you, Due. But now, could you wait for me outside? Minato requested with a smile. Due nodded, still emotional, and left the tent, allowing the conversation between Minato and the commander to continue. Minato looked directly at the commander in front of him. I'm sure you have something to tell me, don't you?
Minato stated, his tone serious. The commander sighed before responding.
That's correct. We've received a command, something urgent. About what? Minato asked, frowning.
It seems our ambush ninjas have detected significant movement coming from the Mist Village in the neighboring country. After such a long period of passive behavior, it appears they're about to act. Headquarters has ordered all camps to remain on alert. The commander paused, adjusting his tone before continuing. Additionally, I've received a direct message for you. Commander Tsukumo has requested that you be prepared to join him on the front lines. Minato nodded, considering the situation. Understood. I'll be ready, Commander, he replied. The commander acknowledged with a nod, and Minato left the tent. Meanwhile, the suspicions of the ambush ninjas were correct. At that exact moment, a large group of mist ninjas was advancing through the land of hot water, heading toward the fire country's border, with the Raikage leading them. Chapter 186, Counterattack against Kumo 01. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 41. Minato suddenly returned to the camp after a Jonin ninja delivered an urgent message in the middle of the morning during their training session at the practice field. As soon as he arrived with his team, he noticed the camp was in turmoil. The ninjas appeared worried, their faces betraying no tranquility as they rushed back and forth. We were attacked. Those bastards from the land of clouds. I knew some of the victims, they just massacred 2 outposts. Minato ignored the heated discussions among the ninjas and quickly made his way to the main tent, leaving his team behind. At the entrance, the guards standing watch recognized him and allowed him through. You may enter. The commander authorized it as soon as you arrived, one of them said. With a brief nod of gratitude, Minato stepped inside. Inside the tent, he found several team leaders engaged in a heated discussion with Commander Aburame. Everyone seemed tense. The moment they noticed Minato's presence, the conversation halted, and the commander directed an order at him. You've arrived, boy. I hope you're prepared, as we discussed yesterday. In the end, we suffered a full-force attack. Everything you need to know is in this scroll, the commander began in a firm tone. Commander Tsukumo has also sent orders. We are forming a main team with the best ninjas to accompany you. You, myself, and others in this room are included. Minato nodded without speaking, prompting the commander to continue. Meanwhile, your team will stay behind, joining the reinforcement group. Is that clear? He asked. Yes, sir, Minato replied, maintaining his serious demeanor. The commander handed a scroll to Minato.
Here is the attack report, along with Commander Tsukumo's instructions. I want you to inform your team and prepare them to join the reinforcements. As for you, prepare to join the main team, which is already on its way, gathering ninjas from each camp. Without further words, Minato nodded and left the tent. Outside, he headed straight to his team's tent but was intercepted by them before entering. They were eager to know what was happening, as the situation seemed grave. Minato explained briefly what the superiors had planned for them. Why do we have to stay behind? We could go with you. Mikoto complained, visibly frustrated. Minato sighed, trying to calm her down. I know, Mikoto. But this isn't up to us. Besides, avoid using your full power, especially you. We can't draw unnecessary attention right now. It's not worth it. He was warning her to keep her Mangekyo Sharingan hidden from the village. Mikoto huffed but nodded, acknowledging Minato's logic. Don't worry, Minato. No matter where we are, we'll do a great job. Due said, trying to cheer the group up. Minato managed a small smile at this. I trust you all. Now, I need to prepare. I'll see you on the battlefield, he said. As Minato withdrew to prepare, the camp continued to buzz with news of a massive attack. The ninjas from the Cloud Village had destroyed 2 outposts in the north, led by the Raikage himself and 2 Jinchuriki. This had resulted in the death of 500 Konoha ninjas, enraging the entire village. The Cloud Village forces were using their full strength and had taken control of 1 outpost, as if waiting for Konoha to respond. The hatred among the ninjas was overwhelming, and everyone wanted to retaliate with deadly force. This drove Tsukumo Hatake to act swiftly, mobilizing the best forces along the border for a counterattack. It didn't take long for Tsukumo to arrive at the camp, accompanied by several ninjas he had gathered from other camps, all ready to depart. He looked at the assembled ninjas alongside Commander Aburame and nodded. Are the ninjas ready? He asked in a firm voice. Yes, Commander. Commander Aburame responded. Good, Tsukumo began. From now on, you are all under my command, he said, and everyone nodded in agreement. Minato, now dressed in his Jonin uniform, joined the group. Tsukumo observed him for a moment before nodding in approval. Now, follow me. We'll advance ahead while the other camps prepare additional reinforcements. I don't want delays as we move through the other camps, he instructed. Quickly, the group led by Tsukumo began to move, stopping at various camps and integrating more elite Jonin ninjas into their ranks at each location. The objective was clear: reclaim the lost territory and face the leaders of the Cloud Village with the strongest force from the northern border. Minato remained silent but felt the intense gazes directed at him as soon as they reached Camp 4, the Uchiha camp. The members of the clan didn't hide their dissatisfaction with him after hearing that the clan's daughter had claimed he had challenged them. However, the most piercing looks came from Fugaku, who seemed to want to kill him with her eyes, and Mazu, Makoto's father, and a commander also summoned to join them. Mazu's gaze reflected not only disapproval, as though Minato had corrupted his daughter, but also a cold, analytical scrutiny. Minato ignored them. By the time all the camps had contributed reinforcements, the group comprised at least 100 ninjas, selected from the very best, including most of their respective commanders. Tsukumo gathered everyone for a quick meeting before they advanced to the area where the Kumo forces were concentrated. As you know, we were attacked without warning. We will respond to the Raikage. We don't yet know exactly what he hopes to achieve with this, but I want to understand his motivations first. There's no logical reason to launch an attack of this nature, it disrupts the entire balance of the war. We will respond appropriately, but I intend to uncover his reasons, Tsukumo said, his gaze scanning the crowd. For that reason, I will negotiate with him initially. However, remain on alert and ready to fight with full force. The Cloud Village cannot be trusted right now, especially since they have 2 Jinchuriki and their best ninjas, as confirmed by the reports. Minato listened attentively alongside his camp's commander, who had left a trusted deputy in charge of coordinating reinforcements back at Camp 6. Among the gathered forces, Minato noticed several members of the Uzumaki clan, identifiable by their red hair and Yuzushio headbands.
They had likely been drawn from the easternmost camp, possibly while on a support mission or requested for their expertise in sealing techniques.
Let's go, then. Advance on my order, Sakumo declared. The 100 ninjas began moving at high speed toward one of the 2 destroyed outposts. Upon arrival, Minato observed the area, now devastated and shrouded in mist.
Using his sensory abilities, he discerned the presence of at least 1,000 enemies scattered across the area. Raising his eyebrows, he recognized the wreckage at the center of the opposing troops. As soon as the wreckage noticed their arrival, he took a few steps forward, crossing his arms and waiting for Sakumo to approach.
"So, you've come," said the wreckage, his voice dripping with irony.
Sakumo raised a hand, signaling his forces to halt, and advanced alone, stopping 30 meters from the wreckage. His expression serious, he raised an eyebrow at the wreckage's remark.
"You launched an attack against us without warning."
"I didn't expect the Cloud Village to stoop to such cowardice," he mocked, his irritation evident.
"Cowardice?"
"You speak of cowardice," retorted the wreckage sharply, his eyes blazing with anger.
"Your village has been abducting our ninjas, committing acts of terrorism, and now you have the audacity to call us cowards? I didn't expect such shamelessness from Konoha." "I sense no lies," Minato thought.
His sensory abilities detected no deceit in the wreckage's words.
The man's anger felt genuine, though Minato couldn't pick up on deeper emotions. "What are you talking about?
We haven't set foot in your territory since before that battle in the Land of Sound." "I don't know where you're getting these accusations," Sakumo replied firmly. Though his anger was real, he maintained his composure. The recent attack had cost hundreds of lives and destroyed 2 outposts, leaving Konoha no chance to mount a defense against the sheer scale of the wreckage's offensive. "Don't give me excuses," the wreckage snapped back, his fury undiminished.
"I've faced Konoha ninjas conducting attacks in my country. I won't stand by and let it continue. That's impossible. We have no infiltration operations in your territory, wreckage."
"Don't come at me with these lies just to justify a cowardly attack that disrupts the balance of the war," Sakumo replied, his voice now darker. The wreckage narrowed his eyes.
"Lies? Then let me prove it."
He gestured to one of his ninjas.
"Bring the bodies."
A cloud ninja quickly advanced, holding a scroll. Sakumo remained silent, observing from a distance as the ninja began to activate the storage seals. With a puff of smoke, several bodies appeared on the ground.
"First, our ninjas began disappearing, and then came attacks from your side."
"Look at them," the wreckage exclaimed furiously, pointing to the bodies.
"Explain this, Sakumo Hatake." Sakumo looked at the bodies, attempting to identify them.
They were clearly ninjas, marked by Konoha headbands and uniforms. Many bore severe wounds, and one body appeared to have self-detonated, as if in a suicide attack. "Tell me, are you saying this body, which we retrieved after it detonated part of my village, is a lie too?" "Many of our citizens are dead," the wreckage growled, staring directly at Sakumo. It was difficult to discern more from the remains.
Suddenly, one of Konoha's commanders stepped forward without warning, positioning himself beside Sakumo and examining the body closely.
"Commander Sakumo, this ninja is one of the missing from Camp 3, he said.
"So, this is one of the ninjas who was abducted?" Sakumo asked before turning back to the wreckage, his anger now evident in his voice. "You must be joking. These ninjas have been disappearing for months from our routes. And now you're bold enough to kidnap them and claim they attacked your village? What a pathetic excuse!" Sakumo roared, furious.
To him, there was no other explanation for the disappearance of these ninjas except a capture operation orchestrated by the Cloud Village. The wreckage, hearing this, reached his limit. In the next moment, he released his chakra, his fury manifesting as an overwhelming presence felt by everyone around, a chakra comparable to that of a tailed beast.
"You dare accuse me of this?"
"I expected many things from Konoha, but this is unacceptable," the wreckage shouted, as an aura of lightning began to envelop his body. Before anyone could react, the wreckage shattered the ground beneath him and charged at an astonishing speed toward Sakumo. The commander quickly prepared himself, alongside another leader at his side. However, the area around them erupted from the impact of the Raikage attack. Tsukumo was launched backward, managing to evade the direct blow, while the other commander was sent crashing to the ground, gravely injured, unable to react to the Raikage's incredible speed.
Prepare to attack.
We will avenge what Konoha's ninjas have done to us, the Raikage commanded, as his allies readied themselves for combat.
Konoha's ninjas also began organizing, prepared to face the enemy's assault. Minato stood among them, his mind already racing.
He noted that the Raikage seemed genuine in his accusations.
He wasn't lying. Whoever is behind this is stealing the bodies and using their chakra to blend in. This method creates perfect chaos and shifts the blame between Konoha and the Cloud. Only one being could orchestrate something like this.
Madara must be working behind the scenes to weaken the villages, Minato thought, analyzing the situation. However, there was no time to dwell on these thoughts. In the next instant, the troops from Konoha and the Cloud charged at each other.
Minato surged forward alongside the northern border elite, prepared to confront the enemies.
Tsukumo, having recovered, steeled himself to face the Raikage directly, who was advancing toward him with full force. Even though Minato knew the Cloud village was being manipulated, he wouldn't show mercy, not after the attack they had launched. Moreover, this was his chance to retaliate for their attempt to capture Kushina. A flash of anger appeared in his eyes at the mere thought of it. Chapter 187 Counterattack against Kumo 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 40. As soon as the Raikage gave the order to attack, his ninjas advanced with immediate speed toward the enemies. As they ran forward, they quickly spread across the battlefield. The Raikage was the first to act, aiming to strike Tsukumo. The latter wore a cautious expression as he noticed a fallen Konoha ninja, one of his camp commanders, lying nearby, while the ground exploded once more under the Raikage's powerful attacks. I need to get him away from here, thought Tsukumo, drawing his weapon and attempting to lead the Raikage away from the area. Meanwhile, he signaled the Konoha ninjas with his fingers and drew his sword to face the Raikage head-on. The Konoha troops quickly moved in, with experienced jonins forming defensive lines while specialists prepared counterattacks. They swiftly retrieved the fallen commander's body, carrying it behind the fighting lines. A Cloud ninja, charging toward them, began forming seals. Raiton, Korwa Kaminari. Black lightning began to dance around him before launching in a devastating arc toward Konoha's lines. The electricity destroyed everything in its path as it advanced toward its enemies, but a Konoha ninja reacted instantly. Doton, Doryohiki, the ninja shouted, completing his seals and raising an enormous earthen wall that absorbed most of the impact. Even so, the lightning's strength cracked the wall, sending dust and debris flying in all directions. On the opposite side, a Kunoichi from the Cloud performed quick seals and invoked Futon, de Tapa. A powerful gust of wind swept the dust away but also forced the Konoha ninjas to scatter. The Uchiha group stayed together and seized the opportunity to launch fire projectiles. Katan, Hausenka no Jutsu. Flames lit up the sky, descending like a deadly rain upon the Cloud ninjas. Quick! Stop that attack, one of the Cloud ninjas shouted as a group began performing joint seals. In the next moment, electricity and flames collided, neither element managing to overpower the other. Hurry, launch that, a Konoha ninja called out. A seal specialist summoned a scroll and performed a sealing jutsu. Fuin Jutsu. From the scroll emerged hundreds of kunai and other weapons. Protect against the attack, one of the Cloud ninjas commanded. Those skilled in earth jutsu erected barriers to defend against the barrage. The Konoha ninja was frustrated but had little time to dwell on it, as a direct attack struck him in the next instant, his head exploding from a lightning strike. There was no escaping death for many on both sides as the battlefield turned into a slaughter.
This is bad, there are too many of them. Minato murmured, watching as one or more Konoha ninjas fell at the same time.
Even though they were far superior on average to the enemy, they were still outnumbered 1,000 to a handful, while the Raikage engaged Tsukumo in a fierce battle elsewhere. From atop a hill, two Uzumaki ninjas worked in unison. One created a defensive barrier with Fuin Jutsu, Shirshir and Jin.
shielding their allies from a massive lightning attack. The other activated an explosive seal that unleashed a devastating shockwave toward the enemy. Explosions rippled across the battlefield as multiple jutsus clashed incessantly.
The enemies began to encircle Konoha, pressing closer with their superior numbers.
The entire battlefield descended into chaos. Commanders shouted orders while soldiers performed seals, countering enemy attacks. Minato advanced steadily, analyzing the battlefield.
He noticed the two Jinchuriki who had yet to engage in combat, holding back in the rear, likely waiting for the right moment.
This is bad. A Konoha sensor ninja shouted.
Minato turned to assess the situation, spotting at least 50 enemy ninjas forming seals simultaneously, preparing to unleash a large-scale attack against them.
This is bad. Minato murmured.
He quickly decided to act, advancing at high speed while using Geppo and Saro, dodging multiple attacks from the ninjas in front of him.
Finally, both sides clashed with the enemy forces, Konoha's and Kyumo's kunai colliding in fierce combat. Minato continued his relentless advance as if dancing across the battlefield.
His precise reflexes alerted him to any incoming attacks or stray strikes from nearby skirmishes, and he evaded them all. The Kyumo ninjas grew frustrated, watching helplessly as Minato moved effortlessly through their ranks, none able to stop his progress as he neared the 50 ninjas preparing a massive attack. Minato struck an enemy with a kick or a punch whenever he had the chance, pushing through until there were no Kyumo ninjas around him. He pressed forward into the enemy's field, drawing the full attention of all their forces.
Quick, attack him. He's alone, one of the Kyumo ninjas shouted.
The enemies began to converge on him, launching a barrage of attacks. Jutsus of various elements, lightning, water, earth, and even fire, were hurled at him, but Minato deftly defended against them all. Finding himself surrounded, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his marked Hiraishin kunai.
That kunai. It's him. The fast Konoha ninja from the rumors, an enemy exclaimed upon seeing it.
Despite his youthful appearance, Minato demonstrated the skill of a seasoned veteran. Using shadow clones, he launched multiple marked kunai in all directions. Some ninjas immediately retreated, aware of the danger they posed, as the kunai landed in strategic points both near and far across the battlefield. In the next instant, Minato vanished from the center of the enemy's encirclement. He reappeared elsewhere, striking down one ninja or neutralizing another before disappearing again. He continued advancing through the enemy group, knocking out anyone near his kunai, relying on his observation haki to maintain total awareness of the area around him.
Don't let him get close.
Stay away from the marked kunai, one of the Kyumo ninjas shouted. Destroy the kunai, another yelled.
Minato simply smiled. Too late.
Forming a seal with his hands, he ignited numerous kunai. Among those he had thrown were kunai with explosive tags that he had marked with seals to deceive the enemy. Suddenly, over 50 kunai that he had launched began to explode.
Get away!
Was the last desperate cry before the first explosion went off, followed by the second and third.
Boom! 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 The entire forest in that area descended into chaos as dust and smoke rapidly enveloped the battlefield, obstructing the enemy's vision.
Damn it, where is he? The ninjas asked in worry. He's over there, a sensor ninja pointed to where Minato should be.
Within the smoke, a cutting sound emerged, blowing the smoke away.
Minato reappeared 30 meters to the left, near one of his kunai, his hand raised as an intense glow formed the Raisin Shuriken, its characteristic wind spiraling into shape. The ninjas barely had time to react to Minato's jutsu as he launched it directly at the 50 Kyumo ninjas. Some tried to block it with earthwall jutsus to protect their comrades, but the moment the Raisin Shuriken touched the defenses, it shattered everything, continuing its advance with unstoppable force.
The ninjas scrambled to escape in desperation, but it was too late.
In the next moment, a massive explosion devastated the forest, obliterating the 50 ninjas. The shockwave and slicing winds spread across the field, leaving destruction in their wake on all sides.
Damn it, what kind of jutsu is that? A Kyumo ninja exclaimed, staring at the attack that had wiped out dozens of his allies in mere moments.
Meanwhile, the Konoha ninjas observed in awe from a distance, as Minato stood unscathed amidst the enemies, having managed to stop their large-scale attack.
This provoked an immediate reaction.
In the next instant, numerous enemy ninjas from all sides charged at the young shinobi.
Minato quickly began to defend himself, utilizing his skills, precise taijutsu reflexes, and his kunai. "This is bad. We've lost our first attack," a frustrated Kumo ninja shouted. "Leave it to me."
The voice of the Two-Tails Jinchuriki rang out from behind. He began transforming into his perfect bijou form, emerging in colossal size as his paws slammed into the ground. A thunderous roar sent a wave of tension through the Konoha ninjas as they watched Matatabi from a distance.
"This is bad. They're using the bijou again," one of the Konoha ninjas murmured anxiously.
Tsukumo observed the scene, frustrated as he tried to formulate a strategy to deal with the new assault. He watched as the bijou opened its mouth, beginning to gather energy. All he could do was watch, held at bay by the Raikage, who wouldn't let him escape.
Only one person could stop the attack.
The Raikage, sensing victory, became more aggressive, aiming to kill Tsukumo once and for all. As the Bijudama was fired toward Konoha's forces, hitting some Kumo ninjas along the way, Minato acted again. As the destructive energy sphere approached, he vanished into thin air, reappearing directly in its path using his teleportation jutsu. The energy ball suddenly stopped in midair, as lines of Fuinjutsu formed around it, beginning to absorb it.
"That again," one ninja muttered, recognizing the jutsu.
Relief spread across the faces of those watching in disbelief.
"I knew it." Tsukumo couldn't help but smile. Even the Raikage looked stunned, watching the Bijudama vanish. But what happened next took everyone by surprise. In the next moment, Minato used one of his marked kunai that he had thrown into the enemy's ranks and redirected the Bijudama right into the center of the opposing army. Before Matatabi's Jinchuriki could react, the explosion occurred.
A massive devastation swept across the battlefield, annihilating approximately 200 to 300 Kumo ninjas and leaving everyone stunned. The surrounding forest was obliterated, reduced to dust as the explosion's force rippled outward, erasing every trace of the enemy forces in that area.
"I did it,"
Minato murmured, staring at the destruction he had caused. Some of his allies nearby were left speechless as they took in the scene.
"That was incredible."
A Konoha ninja commented in admiration, unable to hide his amazement at what the young Jonin had done.
Even Makoto's father watched in stunned silence, his eyes wide open. "That boy.
What did he just do?" the Raikage muttered, his tone shaken as his expression grew more serious. For a moment, the Raikage completely forgot about Tsukumo, who seized the opportunity and lunged at him.
"Where do you think you're going?"
Tsukumo shouted, taking advantage of the opening in a desperate moment. He struck the Raikage, leaving a shallow cut as he pressed his attack. Meanwhile, Matatabi reverted from its bijou form. Its Jinchuriki stood frozen, staring at the devastation with a furrowed brow.
"This can't be real," the Jinchuriki murmured, disbelief etched on his face.
After all, the destruction was the result of his own Bijudama. As the Kumo ninjas struggled to regroup, it was evident that their morale had been shattered.
To make matters worse, reinforcements arrived to aid Konoha.
Footsteps echoed through the forest behind Konoha's troops. A multitude of ninjas emerged, all clad in Konoha uniforms.
These reinforcements, over 1,000 strong, had finally arrived to support Konoha's forces.
Within minutes, Kumo's troops found themselves surrounded, unable to withstand the renewed assault. Konoha had decisively turned the tide of the battle, with the young Minato standing at the center of this decisive victory.
Chapter 188 Counterattack against Kumo 03. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 40.
Quickly, all reinforcements filled the area, with more than 1,000 Konoha ninjas coming right behind as they advanced at full speed toward the group of Kumo ninjas fighting against the northern elite. They had already lost their morale after losing hundreds of ninjas in the last Bijudama that Minato had redirected into their midst. They were in crisis, and they quickly felt the pressure as the ninjas attacked those who couldn't escape quickly enough, either being struck by jutsus or caught in taijutsu. For Konoha, the collective cry echoed as the Kumo ninjas stared in frustration. In his fight with Sakumo, the third Raikage was clearly displeased as he watched his army losing all its advantage, turning into a group being decimated. Sakumo barely had time to react as he saw the Raikage increase his lightning release even further, reaching a level that even Sakumo couldn't properly respond to. Unable to react in time, Sakumo received a devastating punch from the Raikage. He had only the reflex to imbue his blade with chakra to prevent it from breaking under the absurd force of that punch. The impact was so intense that he was hurled backward like a rag doll, breaking the ground as he landed, carving it with his body. Quickly, the Raikage dashed toward the retreating Kumo army, attempting to reorganize his troops. "Damn Konoha ninjas," he roared with a thunderous voice, raising his hand high before reaching the enemies. He gathered lightning in his fingers and shot it toward the sky. A thunderous explosion erupted, sending a massive lightning bolt almost 1,000 meters into the air as if he were signaling. He then advanced mercilessly, striking down anyone pursuing the disadvantaged Kumo troops as they retreated. Amidst the chaos, the Raikage encountered the first Konoha ninja who hadn't had time to retreat. With a single punch, the ninja was killed, his head separated from his body, and the Raikage moved on to the next. The battlefield quickly became a bloodbath as the Raikage continued killing ninja after ninja. Until he noticed a strange Konoha ninja defeating several Kumo ninjas. This ninja displayed a peculiar fighting style, surrounded by a chakra emanating from his body while his skin was red. He seemed to avoid killing his opponents, incapacitating them with precise strikes. Meanwhile, the Kumo ninjas barely had time to react before being struck by the young Konoha ninja's final kick. The Raikage quickly ignored the other ninjas he had intended to kill and charged directly at him to eliminate this threat. His objective was clear: to prevent Konoha's forces from advancing further. He raised his fist to crush his next target. Due had just defeated his opponent when he sensed great danger coming his way, even while using the fourth gate. He barely had time to look at his advancing adversary, who was coming at him with a fist, time slowing to a crawl. Due couldn't react to his impending death from that attack. But before the Raikage could strike, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, someone appeared, pushing the Konoha ninja to the ground and narrowly deflecting the Raikage's devastating punch. That thunder-imbued fist struck the air, creating a pressure explosion around them. Surprised, the Raikage saw a blonde-haired boy appear at high speed, placing himself between him and the Konoha ninja. Minato, upside down, appeared, pushing Due down to dodge the Raikage's punch, while twisting his body to ensure his arm wasn't struck by the enemy's blow. He saw the Raikage pass by him as Minato managed to touch the lightning-clad shoulder despite the potential harm. But Minato didn't stop, his hand sustaining only minor damage, leaving faint lines of light. All of this happened as if in slow motion. The Raikage could barely keep up with the precise movements of the young ninja, shocked to see someone reacting even faster than himself. Then he moved past them like a blur and turned to observe Minato, realizing the young ninja had escaped his grasp in an instant. Most who witnessed this scene only saw everything happen in the blink of an eye, leaving Minato behind as the Raikage had already covered over 20 meters, unable to strike Due, who stood dazed, unsure of what had just happened and how he escaped that certain death feeling. "This boy, again," the Raikage murmured, quickly advancing toward the next line of unsuspecting ninjas, leaving Minato behind for now. As he approached the ninjas, who could only turn their surprised eyes toward him and await their deaths since Sakumo was no longer holding back Kumo's strongest ninja, something similar to before happened again. But this time, it wasn't someone appearing beside the ninja, it was someone directly in front of him, even before he got close. It can't be. The Raikage thought, stunned. Not only was it the boy from earlier, but there was a sharp glow in the boy's hand. Minato was there, holding a freshly crafted Raisin Shuriken, catching the Raikage off guard and striking his chest. The Raikage was too close to react in time. Suddenly, his body was hurled backward by the force of the S-rank jutsu, halting his advance and throwing him back to the area where he was rallying Kumo's ninjas. All around, witnesses stared, astonished. The Raikage fell heavily into a distant area where some of his ninjas were still retreating. In the next moment, a massive explosion erupted, destroying an area over 50 meters wide.
The shockwave shook the battlefield. Did he defeat the Raikage? Some Konoha ninjas asked, stunned by what they had just witnessed. Minato landed calmly on a nearby tree. As he descended, he already knew what was coming. Minato! Makoto exclaimed, rushing toward him.
Minato didn't look at her, focusing instead on the cloud of smoke created by his jutsu.
Are you okay? Did you manage to defeat him? Makoto asked as Due also approached them. I'm fine. About him. He can't be caught.
That doesn't work on him, Minato replied calmly, his eyes fixed on the spot where movement quickly stirred under the worried gazes of the Kyumo ninjas watching their leader in the aftermath of the explosion. But amidst the smoke, the Raikage emerged, clearly furious. He looked at Minato, now over 200 meters away from where he had been thrown, with a mix of anger and curiosity. That didn't hurt me, the Raikage assessed the damage to his body, just scratches, despite being caught in the explosion. However, how did he appear in front of me without warning? This isn't just the second Hokage's jutsu I read about in the reports. The thought lingered in his mind as he tried to grasp the possibilities of the Flying Thunder God technique beyond what the reports had described. Meanwhile, Minato, from the other side, locked eyes with the Raikage in a silent challenge, realizing his attack had been ineffective. Well, let's test this, he murmured, raising his hand and clenching his fist. A layer of haki began to envelop his hand as his gaze returned to the Raikage in the distance. In an instant, Minato disappeared, and the Raikage widened his eyes as he noticed this. At that very moment, he felt a slight pain from a precise punch to his chest. Surprised, he quickly looked down and saw the young ninja already there, without any warning. What's happening? This was once again the Raikage's frustrated thought as he felt the impact of the strike. Minato had tested his mastery of haki against the Raikage's lightning armor and felt the chest of his opponent slightly cave in under his punch. Even the Raikage felt a sharp pain in that spot. His bones seemed to crack under the impact. He broke through my defense? Once more, the Raikage was astonished by Minato, grappling with the fact that this strange punch had penetrated his lightning cloak, something even the Bijus or Tsukumo couldn't easily accomplish. The Raikage momentarily retreated, stepping back from the boy to counterattack, stomping hard on the ground before charging again. This time, he attempted to strike Minato with a punch at less than a centimeter's distance. But once again, Minato vanished, reappearing beside his companions as the Raikage struck only air once more. Are you okay? I saw you hit him, said Makoto, concerned. Other ninjas began to approach, equally astonished by Minato's actions. He sighed, a little disappointed. Yes, but it seems my attacks didn't work very well, Minato replied seriously as he looked at his comrades. He let his gaze linger for a moment, then looked down at his fist, where the haki dissipated. Well, I can't expect much more from my haki yet. I need to develop it a lot further, he thought. Meanwhile, Tsukumo had finally recovered and was approaching the front lines. He looked quite disheveled, with a streak of blood on his face, clearly a result of the blow he had taken. Commander Tsukumo. The Jonin near Minato looked at their commander with concern. I'm fine, said Tsukumo, noticing their worried expressions. He wiped some of the blood off his face and continued, just regroup. I want everyone ready to face another Kyumo attack. Understood, the ninjas responded before moving away to carry out his orders. Suddenly, a Hyuga rushed toward them, his eyes focused on the distance. Commander! There's an entire group heading our way, he exclaimed, alarmed. Tsukumo frowned, assessing the situation. Prepare to engage them. Everyone, get into formation, he commanded, planning how to counterattack as he reorganized the troops. He then turned toward Minato. You did very well back there. You managed to stop their advance and weaken the enemy's efforts. More than that, you pushed the Raikage back when he was unstoppable, killing our ninjas. Thank you, Tsukumo said sincerely. But there's no time to talk now. Just keep protecting our troops, he added, and Minato nodded in acknowledgement. Tsukumo moved off to regroup Konoha's forces. On the battlefield, where Kyumo's ninjas were reorganizing for a counterattack, the Raikage appeared.
His thunder-release chakra cloak glowed intensely. He looked at his chest for a moment, intrigued by what had happened. How did that boy manage to reach me so suddenly? And how was he able to bypass the defense of my cloak? The Raikage murmured, still perplexed. Raikage-sama! A ninja suddenly called out, pointing to him from the side. You have a mark on your shoulder, he said, making the Raikage size widen as he realized what it could be. Yes, there's a mark. That's how he reached me. It's the same as with his seal tag kunai. It must have been when he touched my shoulder. Clever boy, the Raikage thought, clearly impressed. Erase it, quickly, the Raikage ordered urgently. He began reinforcing his chakra layer even further, suspecting that the boy might be waiting for the moment he let down his guard to attack again. He could feel the young ninja's gaze fixed on him the entire time. That boy. He's younger than my son, maybe by about 7 years. I can't let him grow stronger. If I allow it, he'll become a much bigger problem in the future, he murmured to himself. Come here, he shouted, summoning 2 Jinchuriki. Tashi, the Jinchuriki who had been defeated by Sakumo while transformed into the Nibi, and another, of the Hachibi, appeared before him swiftly. I want you both to launch an attack in full Bijou form, the Raikage ordered. The Eight-Tails Jinchuriki hesitated before replying, Raikage-sama, I can't fully control the Hachibi. He'll take over my body, and I'll die. I know that. But you can transform for a short period, can't you? I understand you'll die afterward, and he'll be freed. Even so, I want you to do this for the village. Can you? The Raikage asked, his voice firm. The Jinchuriki nodded solemnly. He knew his fate was sealed, but this was the Raikage's order, and he was willing to carry it out, even if it cost him his life. The other Jinchuriki, of the Nibi, murmured as he looked at his superior. Raikage-sama, if he can still use those seals, that boy might teleport our Bijudamas right into the middle of our own army. Yes, I'm well aware of that, the Raikage replied. But from what I've observed, he can only redirect one attack at a time. That's why I don't want you to launch Bijudamas. Use your Bijou's other abilities instead, he ordered. Understood. We will prepare, the Jinchurikis said in unison. Meanwhile, Sakumo and the Konoha ninjas were regrouping their forces, numbering over 1,000 in total. At the same time, the enemy forces were finally receiving reinforcements, boosting their troops' morale. Their army is now larger than ours, said a sensory ninja, approaching Sakumo. Yes, Sakumo replied with a serious expression. But we will show them that Konoha's strength is not measured by the number of soldiers. All right, prepare for battle. Sakumo exclaimed as the more than 1,000 Konoha ninjas organized themselves, adjusting their positions and readying for the confrontation. They're coming. Sakumo murmured, watching the battlefield. He was shocked to sense the absurd amount of chakra accumulating on the other side. Suddenly, 2 Jinchurikis began transforming, and in an instant, Matatabi and the Hachibi appeared. This is bad. Sakumo muttered, watching the colossal creatures take shape. Both Jinchurikis had partial control over their bijus, and the massive forms made Konoha's troops seem like mere ants before them. Minato, tell me you can stop this. Due pleaded, his voice trembling with fear. No, I can only handle one attack at a time. If they launch multiple attacks at once, I won't be able to stop them, Minato replied, his expression serious, already imagining the enemy's plan. Minato! Sakumo's voice called out as he returned to the front lines. He approached quickly. Can you do Sanju Rashomon? I read in a report that you've learned to cast that jutsu. I can summon 2 gates myself. If we work together, we can make it work, he suggested. Minato thought for a moment and nodded. The reports confirmed he had mastered Sanju Rashomon, an S-rank jutsu, during his last visit to Konoha. Meanwhile, the Kumo ninjas advanced, waiting for the Bijus to launch a devastating attack against Konoha. The moment the attacks began, the Jinchurikis coordinated their moves. Matatabi unleashed a rain of blue flames that burned everything in its path, while the Hachibi fired a massive energy ball expanding directly from its mouth. Quick! Let's do it now, shouted Sakumo. he and Minato moved to the front lines.
With their hands joined, they both performed rapid hand seals.
Then, slamming their hands onto the ground in unison, seals began appearing.
In the next moment, gates started to rise from the earth, 1, 2, 3, and finally 4 massive gates, each with demonic faces carved into them and ringing bells attached.
The gates formed a defensive line.
In the following instant, the bijou attacks collided violently with the gates.
The first gate exploded almost immediately. The second held for a brief moment before being destroyed.
The third gate managed to withstand the attacks longer but eventually fell after a series of powerful explosions. The final gate, however, endured until the end, though it was deeply cracked.
We managed to hold off the attacks. Tsukumo murmured, relieved. But before he could relax, Minato sensed imminent danger through his observation haki.
In the next moment, someone appeared beside the last gate. It was the Raikage, advancing at incredible speed and stomping the ground with enough force to create a shockwave.
Minato barely had time to react.
He crossed his arms in front of his body to block the Raikage's punch but was thrown back several meters by the impact.
Minato! Tsukumo shouted as he saw the Raikage relentlessly pursue Minato.
The Raikage passed by everyone else in an instant, ignoring the other ninjas and heading straight for his target. Minato realized the Raikage had deliberately distanced himself from the rest of the troops, luring him into a one-on-one confrontation.
Alright, it looks like I'll have to deal with this alone. Minato murmured, watching the thunderbolts heralding the Raikage's approach.
The Raikage advanced like an unstoppable force through the forest. Minato allowed himself to be attacked intentionally, confident that he could handle the Raikage now, knowing that the enemy was drawing him away from the others. Chapter 189 Counterattack against Kumo 04.
Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 40. Minato!
Guy shouted, seeing Minato fly away at high speed along with the Raikage, who was chasing after him.
Damn it! Tsukumo began to speak but couldn't finish.
He was ready to give orders to help Minato, but the next moment, a group of Kumo ninjas finally emerged, accompanied by the bijus, most notably the Nibi, charging toward Konoha's defensive line.
Prepare to fight.
That was the only order Tsukumo managed to give as he silently hoped the boy would survive and be able to use his teleportation jutsu if in danger.
Quickly, 2 Uzumaki ninjas took the lead to face the bijus.
The Kumo group advanced at last, and the remaining village ninjas engaged in a frenzied battle, turning the area into total chaos, with powerful jutsus being launched from both sides alongside combined seals. Meanwhile, Minato was still soaring through the forest, watching as the Raikage rapidly closed in on him. As soon as the Raikage reached him, he attempted to punch Minato, but Minato managed to dodge the attack, using Jeppo to move mid-air. This surprised the Raikage, who was unfamiliar with such an ability.
Damn, what a slippery kid, he muttered, a bit frustrated to see Minato always escaping.
Still in the air, Minato threw a kunai toward the Raikage. Predictably, the Raikage deflected it with ease, but it was enough for Minato to appear above him with a Rasengan ready. Unable to defend himself, the Raikage was struck directly in the back and hurled to the ground, creating a massive crater with the force of the impact. Minato landed at a safe distance, observing the hole he had created. "You're certainly quite special, boy," the Raikage said as he emerged from the crater, seemingly unscathed. "I can't remember the last time I saw such a talented ninja from a village other than mine. But I'll have to eliminate you here. After all, you're too dangerous to be left alive." Crackling with lightning, the Raikage prepared to charge again.
Minato knew he could easily escape, but he decided to face him.
After all, he could keep the Raikage away from the ongoing battle among the ninjas, where explosions were heard, and the bijus were seen moving in the open sky against Konoha's forces. Minato glanced at the distant bijus and then returned his attention to the Raikage. "It's fine if I kill you here, isn't it?"
Minato suddenly said calmly, provoking the Raikage. "Not even your S-rank jutsu can do anything against me."
"Don't get cocky, boy," the Raikage replied confidently.
"You know." Minato began, ignoring the response. "I've never really shown what I'm capable of at any moment.
I always preferred not to stand out too much with abilities I've only used in emergencies. After all, it would make me an easy target for some people in the village who might try something against me after seeing that I could be uncontrollable. So, I stayed discreet. The Raikage remained silent, merely observing Minato. He didn't understand where the boy was going with this but continued to listen. Maybe now I can let loose a little. Minato gave a slight smile. Let me ask you a question, Raikage. The Raikage raised an eyebrow, curious, as the boy continued speaking. You seem pretty confident, but are you ready to see what I can do? It doesn't matter what you have to say, roared the Raikage, interrupting. He increased the flow of lightning in his body even more and charged it full force toward Minato. Minato didn't even care about it and continued before the Raikage could reach him. What I want to ask is very simple, Raikage, Minato said. The Raikage kept his gaze narrowed. Have you ever received a lightspeed kick? The Raikage's eyes widened in shock as he heard Minato's voice uttering the last words behind him. He swore there was no marked symbol on him, no kunai thrown, nor any direct touch from the young ninja. He had only felt the jutsus striking his back, but he couldn't understand what was happening. Can he transmit seals through jutsu? The Raikage thought for a moment. However, that wasn't it. When he looked to the side, an intense glow appeared, and he saw Minato's leg shining. Without understanding what it was, the Raikage watched in slow motion, unable to react, before receiving a direct kick to the face. The impact didn't injure him but sent him flying, hurling him like an uncontrolled bullet. What was that? The Raikage murmured, flying through the air, dazed, as his body repeatedly slammed against the ground. He struggled to regain balance, looking into the distance and seeing the glow fade more than 500 meters away. The boy had thrown him that far with a single brute force kick, leaving him bewildered. Suddenly, another glow appeared. Minato, moving at the speed granted by his fruit, reappeared in front of the Raikage in an instant, as if he were a beam of light. He stopped calmly, staring at the leader of Kumo. The Raikage raised an eyebrow, confused. What is this? What kind of jutsu is that? He couldn't understand what was happening, but with no time to think, he charged at Minato. Minato moved like a beam of light, dodging the attack. The Raikage's blow hit the ground with enough force to create an explosion, but he quickly looked around, even more confused, while Minato stood calmly nearby, observing him without fear. You take pride in your speed, don't you, Raikage? Minato said in a calm but provocative tone. Let me show you what true speed is. After all, have you ever fought a ninja who can move at the speed of light? The Raikage barely had time to react before Minato appeared in front of him again, delivering another strike. This time, the blow, enhanced with haki, hit his chest and sent him flying backward. Although the impact wasn't fatal, the repeated hits were taking a toll on his body. His already cracked bones began to buckle under the pressure. I need a few more of these, and I could pull it off, Minato thought, satisfied as he observed the Raikage, now 5 meters away. His haki was beginning to wane, but he had been aiming to damage and weaken the Raikage's body at specific points. You bastard, roared the Raikage as Minato calmly walked toward him. What's happening? Seeing Minato unafraid, walking toward him as if dealing with a child, the Raikage's frustration grew. How can this boy be so strong? Before, I just wanted to defeat him, but now I need to understand where this absurd strength and these abilities come from. You shouldn't think so much, Minato taunted again, disappearing just as he finished his sentence. The Raikage turned his head to the side, but it was too late. Minato reappeared at his side, delivering another powerful kick to his face, sending him flying through the forest again. Minato's brute strength, after removing all the weight seals before the fight, was considerable, but combined with haki, the damage was even greater. Trees were uprooted by the impact as the leader of Kumo continued to be hurled through the terrain. Minato gave him no time to react. He reappeared again in a burst of intense light, delivering another direct blow. The Raikage was slammed into the ground, exploding against the terrain with such force that the surrounding area was obliterated. The Raikage could feel his body colliding violently, unable to react or counterattack, while Minato, glowing, appeared in various blind spots, striking him relentlessly. It was one thing to deal with the flying Raijin, but now he was facing a ninja who moved without seals, whose body became light itself, using his speed to amplify the force of his attacks. Meanwhile, the ninjas of Kumo and Konoha continued fighting fiercely on the main battlefield. The Bijus were still in motion, but no one knew exactly the state of Minato and the Reikage, who had disappeared into the forest. From afar, only flashes of light could be seen, golden glows outshining the Reikage's blue lightning amidst explosions. "What's happening over there?" a Kumo ninja said, worried. "We should check for ourselves, it seems the Reikage is in trouble." A sensory ninja, eyes closed, tried to sense the situation while observing the Reikage chakra being thrown back and forth. Amidst the explosions, Minato murmured, "Well, I think I've irritated him enough." He watched the Reikage, who was now exploding with rage. Despite his immense power, the Cloud Leader was taking a beating in his current state, while the area around him was utterly destroyed. He remained alive only thanks to his lightning chakra armor. Minato, on the other hand, seemed to be toying with him. The Reikage hadn't sustained visible injuries, but the humiliation was unbearable. He had taken 3 more of those dark punches, and he could feel his chest beginning to crumble under the pressure if he didn't end this soon. Once again, the Reikage had no time to react as Minato's final kick was so powerful it sent him flying straight into the center of the battlefield where ninjas from both countries were clashing. The fighting stopped as everyone froze, watching in shock as the Reikage crashed into the ground, creating a crater in the middle of the conflict. He emerged from the hole, teeth clenched in frustration, glaring at the surrounding chaos. Even the Konoha ninjas who witnessed the scene were left speechless. As the Reikage struggled to his feet, Minato teleported to one of the kunai he had previously left on the field using Hiraishin. He scanned the battlefield, noting the Nibi being held off by a group of Uzumakis and other Fuinjutsu specialists from Konoha, while the Hachibi rampaged uncontrollably, attacking everything in its path in an attempt to escape. "Let's finish this," Minato said, opening his hand as a Rasengan began forming. "Do you see this? I only need this to take you down, Reikage." The Reikage's brow furrowed, rage overtaking his expression. "That brat! How dare he!" Completely enraged, the Reikage charged at Minato, raising a single finger, intent on killing him in front of everyone. Minato advanced as well, carefully calculating each move as he sprinted toward his approaching enemy. He knew he only needed to land the Rasengan close enough to end the fight, now that he had sufficiently weakened the Reikage's chest. Using his observation haki, Minato dodged the Reikage's attack with precision, in a manner reminiscent of how Naruto would later evade strikes using Sage Mode. As he dodged, Minato adjusted the Rasengan's angle in slow motion as the Reikage passed by him, guiding the Reikage's arm so that his extended finger redirected toward his own chest. With a devastating thud, the Reikage felt searing pain in his right chest. His chakra-reinforced finger pierced through his own flesh, exiting through his back in a brutal blow as blood erupted in all directions. The ninjas watching the battle were stunned by what they had just witnessed. "Reikage-sama!" shouted the Kumo ninjas, rushing to protect their wounded leader. They knew Minato could finish him off at any moment, but the Reikage, despite the excruciating pain and now kneeling, kept his lightning cloak active, attempting to shield himself from a final attack. Kunai and shuriken flew toward Minato, who leaped backward, catching one kunai midair and throwing it at an advancing ninja. The weapon struck its target as other enemies continued closing in. Surrounded, Minato resorted to taijutsu, fending off multiple attackers with skill and precision. Among the advancing Kumo ninjas, Minato spotted a young man who bore a striking resemblance to the Reikage. It was none other than the third Reikage's son, who rushed forward to retrieve his father's body, visibly shaken. With a look filled with hatred, glared at Minato before retreating, carrying the injured Reikage away. Minato watched him for a moment, considering whether to pursue and kill him. But he quickly dismissed the thought. "I'll have to let him live," he thought. Killing the Reikage's son would only bring more hatred and complications for future relations with the Cloud Village. We need alliances, not eternal enemies. With the Reikage severely injured, the Kumo ninjas began retreating from the battlefield. Meanwhile, Konoha's Fuinjutsu experts finally managed to contain the Nibi, beginning the sealing process, while the Hachibi fled into the distance.
Well, I guess it's over, Minato murmured, watching the cloud ninjas withdraw. He was tired but relieved. The ground around him was soaked with the blood of the third Raikage. His friends began approaching, relieved to see Minato unharmed, as Makoto leapt forward to embrace him. Chapter 190 Yellow Flash of Konoha. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 40. We're parting ways, so, Due began to cry in the training area where Team 7 used to train. Minato smiled faintly in front of him, a somewhat melancholic expression on his face. Don't worry. This war won't last much longer. We'll be heading back to Konoha soon, and we'll meet there. He spoke during their small meeting. After all, today was the day they would return to the western border, everyone except for Due. The war had calmed down by now. There hadn't been any further attacks from the Cloud Village since the previous battle, and 3 months had passed since then. Minato was no longer taking on missions, dedicating all his time to training since the current situation allowed him to focus on it. He continued to develop his armament haki, while Due had also started training with the fifth gate, though he was still far from mastering the technique. I'm a little sad about this, but I'm sure we'll meet again in the village like you said. I'll prove to you that I've gotten stronger. Due exclaimed. I'm sure you will, Due. When we meet again in the village, we'll fight. I hope you're much stronger, maybe even with the sixth gate mastered, Minato replied. Yes, I'll do my best. Due confirmed. Great. Let's head back to the camp and get ready. We need to say goodbye to a few people and then go to the central camp, where Commander Sakumo was waiting for us, Minato said. The girls, who had been silent during the conversation, nodded. They couldn't deny that they, too, had grown significantly during this time. They had mastered various techniques of their non-natural elements over the course of the year-long training. Hanabi had refined her mastery of the wind element to the point where her arrows became incredibly destructive, creating craters up to 10 meters in diameter at the point of impact. Meanwhile, Makoto had learned an S-rank jutsu directly taught by Minato, the Kirin, a technique that her future son would also develop. Makoto had already mastered the jutsu, making her power comparable to Sasuke's before he acquired his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, despite being only 14 years old. As for Minato, he had taken his skills to a new level, managing to keep them active for much longer periods. However, he knew he still needed to improve further and planned to do so throughout the remainder of the war. Let's go. Everything's ready, Minato said once they were back at the camp, watching as the tents were taken down and everything was stored in scrolls. The girls had honed their skills in Fuinjutsu to handle this task, which wasn't Dewey's strong suit, not that he needed it. Thinking about the girls' development in Fuinjutsu made Minato reflect. He clenched his fist as he looked at his bare arm, adorned only with storage seal bracers. Hidden Fuinjutsu markings were embedded in his skin, only visible when activated. Over the past year, he had mastered a chakra absorption technique he had developed himself. Although it wasn't comparable to the Rinnegan's ability to absorb any jutsu, his technique was sufficient to drain some chakra from enemy ninjas upon contact. Additionally, he had modified the Hiratian seal to accumulate chakra constantly, functioning like a parasitic siphon. Anyone marked by his teleportation seal would have their chakra gradually drained, allowing Minato to teleport to them, touch the seal, and absorb the stored chakra. There were flaws in the system, but he was working to improve it. To perfect it, he would need Naruto-level control, akin to when his son distributed Kurama's chakra across the entire ninja alliance. This was something he planned to experiment with later. In the end, the three of them, along with Due, headed to the main tent. So, you're leaving, Minato? It's a shame we won't have our hero around, some jonin remarked as they saw him preparing to leave. The news of Minato's departure had already spread, as his popularity had soared since his battle with the Raikage. After all, it wasn't every day that a 14-year-old ninja defeated a Kage and injured him severely, effectively ending an entire conflict. The Cloud Village faced many problems because of this. In addition to having the Nibi sealed by a group of Fuinjutsu specialists, the Hachibi had been released after its Jinchuriki's death shortly afterward. It was expected that the Raikage would handle the situation, but being gravely injured, he was out of commission. This left the Cloud Ninjas to deal with the chaos. It was said that the Hachibi confronted everyone in its path, crossing the border and reaching the land of hot springs, leaving destruction in its wake. After much effort and countless sacrifices, they managed to seal it again. As for the wreckage, there was no news. Everything seemed quiet, but Minato knew he was gravely injured, trying to recover. Minato was certain the wreckage would seek revenge in the future, but there was nothing he could do about it for now. He had done his part, and with the Nibi in Konoha's hands, they would have to negotiate. After the battle, Minato received a title for the first time. Due to his fight, with many witnesses claiming he glowed yellow, thinking he used the Raijin in the forest, he ended up being called the Yellow Flash of Konoha. This nickname, already destined for him, soon spread. Many considered that he had even surpassed Tsukumo Hatake after that battle, being recognized as the strongest ninja on the northern border. This title boosted the morale of all the camps across all the borders. In this war, legendary names had emerged, such as Tsukumo Hatake, the White Fang, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru, the legendary Sannin, and now Minato, the Yellow Flash of Konoha. The latter could barely walk through the camp without being stopped by ninjas wanting to bid farewell. Minato greeted everyone he could as he made his way to the command tent. "Well, it's good to see you." "A shame you're leaving, at least most of you," Commander Aburame murmured upon seeing them. Minato, Makoto, and Hanabi were returning to the western border, but Due would remain there. He would continue his training, as Konoha, observing his results and evolution, decided to keep him under direct supervision. The Hokage had taken great interest in Due, planning to continue his personal training for the rest of the war and further develop the technique mentioned in the reports. Minato believed that, with more than a year of practice, Due could master even the sixth gate. "Duty calls us to the western border, Commander," Minato said in a calm tone in response to Commander Aburame's comment. "Yeah, I know. I heard that Jiraiya-sama is in the Land of Rain on a personal mission after being cleared by the Hokage," the commander said. There was pressure coming from the northern border camp, as there was no other ninja as powerful as Jiraiya to lead them. Moreover, the village's own ninjas were pressuring the Hokage to bring Minato back. It was strange for Minato, but it seemed they wanted him to take his sensei's place. Even so, he felt a bit lost with the idea. He wasn't sure if he was ready to lead an entire camp yet, especially since taking over an advanced post was nothing compared to an entire camp, which carried far greater responsibilities. "I know what you're thinking, kid, but your presence alone greatly boosts the morale of the ninjas. I'm sure you'll do a great job on that border," Commander Aburame commented, seemingly reading the blonde's thoughts. The commander knew how young and promising Minato was. His potential exceeded that of any other ninja in Konoha, and everyone could see it. "Thank you for the kind words, Commander," Minato said, while the commander nodded and turned his attention to the two girls and Due. "Well, I have one more piece of good news for you all. You've all been recommended to become jonin, and the village accepted due to your contributions," the commander said, surprising everyone. "Me too?" Due couldn't help but be astonished, pointing to himself, almost unable to believe what he was hearing. "Yes, your performance has been extraordinary in training, and you've defeated several enemy jonin-level ninjas. You managed to go from a genin to a jonin in just 1 year since you started training. Your skills have been recognized by the Hokage himself, and it's time to acknowledge you as a high-ranking ninja of the village," the man explained as Due began to tear up with emotion, something characteristic of him. The conversations continued for a while, as the commander shared a few more pieces of information. "Thank you for everything, Commander. I hope to see you in the village once the war is over," Minato commented with a small smile. "Do you think I might die?" "I'll do my best to ensure that doesn't happen," the commander replied, offering a slight smile in return. "Anyway, I hope to see you in the village as well, Minato. Maybe we'll arrange a barbecue or something to celebrate the end of this war." Minato nodded, and the three bid their farewells. Due, as always, cried but maintained his determination and spoke with confidence as they parted ways. With the goodbyes done, Minato and the two girls left the camp and advanced toward the main camp. Using the Hiraishin, they appeared near Tsukumo's camp. "You're finally here," Tsukumo remarked, greeting them as soon as he learned of their arrival. Yes. Here are some reports sent by Commander Aburame, along with the Hokage's orders, Minato said, handing over the documents as Tsukumo quickly skimmed through them before setting them aside. Very well. You're cleared to return to the western border. I hope to see you there soon, Tsukumo commented. The Hokage had decided to position Tsukumo at the southern border to handle Suna, while Orochimaru would take command of the northern border. With the success of Tsunade's program, they had begun assigning leaders to study the strategies of medical ninjas embedded in each team. Thank you, Commander. I also hope to see you there, Minato replied. That's good, kid. Have you heard about my son? The commander asked suddenly. Minato shook his head. No. But he already had an idea of what it might be. The boy asked for early graduation. He passed it just 5 years old. He's now acting as a genin. He's doing very well, but without any missions in the war, he said, and Minato nodded. I see. And you're not very happy about it? Minato asked. Of course not. But there's nothing I can do, the commander murmured, clearly displeased. It was evident that his son was walking a path he didn't approve of. Despite breaking academy records and wanting to grow quickly, even surpassing Tsukumo himself, the boy was becoming practically an emotionless tool, following orders without question. Tsukumo disliked the notion that ninjas were merely tools focused solely on the success of missions. I understand. Well, I'm sorry, Minato commented, shrugging lightly. Don't be. But I'll talk to him soon. And I'd very much like you to think again about what I asked of you a long time ago, he said, and Minato nodded. Anyway, you're dismissed. Good luck, he said in conclusion. After that, Minato, Hanabi, and Makoto said their goodbyes. With Minato using the Raijin on the entire team, they teleported directly to the western border, using some seals maintained by the western ninjas for Minato's return to the camp. With that, Minato and his companions moved forward to the final stage of the war. Author's note: Tsukumo was placed at the western border with the intention of having him kill Sasori's parents, as it happened. Minato also finally received his title. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released 1 day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.